Andrew, this has been in the diary for a while, and I'm very excited to talk to you because you're someone who you don't only talk the talk, but you walk the walk. And every time I've heard you speak or read one of your articles, I find something insightful in it. So you've got expertise that goes back a long way. And I know you've done a lot in two sides of the industry, on the sort of the professional punting side as well as the journalism. So, yeah, I'm really grateful for your time.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant, Andrew. Okay, so great. So what is your sort of first memory that betting was a thing when you were a child?
When I was 10, this is 1980, went on a family package holiday to Spain. First time I've been abroad, and they had, like you get the seaside, the sort of 5p drops, or it was 5 peseta drops. And I remember playing that with my family, and that was the first exposure to gambling.
Yeah, one of the best games. One of the best games. As a kid, you think, oh my God, this is a route to riches. Surely this can be beaten.
And you learn about expected value as well. When the coins are teetering over the edge, you want to play that side, not the one with all the gaps.
But it's also the worst side of gambling as well, because it's just one more. Just give me one more go. They're going to fall the next one.
Oh yeah, I mean, I went down the road of sort of fruit machines for several years as a teenager as well, and then it took me a long time to realise that those were completely pointless. And,
something I never did. Okay, so and I know before we hit the record button, we talked a little bit, and I understand that your father's a very good punter. And didn't he have an extraordinary place pot success last year?
Yeah, my dad is a small punter, and he was never into horse racing betting until I got into the industry, and then he follows my selections, and it's great when I play chess with him every Tuesday night. It's a game I abandoned for about 40 years until he moved near to me a few years ago and took it up again. So, and he'll get out his betting slip and say, "Oh, well done today. I had this £1 each way patent, and I got this back, or I did this 20p lucky 15." But yeah, I do a place pot preview for the Tote for their big meeting every Saturday, and going back, I think it was last year's Lincoln meeting, the place pot paid over 7,000 quid. And I'd sort of done a short list, totaling like 288 bets. I think a 10p perm costing £28.80 would have got it up to sort of 60p or something like that. But he's got a £1 free bet from the Tote. So he's just gone through my short list and he's picked out 6 horses, one in each race. He's had 4 winners and 2 seconds and copped over 7,000 quid for his £1 free bet. Now, it might be coincidence, but the Tote then reduced that £1 free bet to 50p a couple of weeks later. So
wow.
It was great to see him. Yeah, and sometimes you get more pleasure from that, having helped somebody to achieve a result like that than you do from backing them yourself.
That's extraordinary. £7,000 on a £1 stake.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's is he resting on his laurels now? Does he still turning over the money?
Yeah, he still bets exactly the same sort of stake. He should probably give sort of lectures on money management, because it hasn't changed. He hasn't started having 100 quid each way on a horse. He'll still go with the same old pound each way.
I'm now thinking I would love to talk to him on this show if he's ever got a spare half hour. We could learn something. So away from the sort of the slot machines and the arcade stuff, what was your first bet on sport?
That would be on football, because I was obsessive about football as a teenager. I supported Reading. I grew up in Maidenhead in Berkshire. Reading was the nearest club to me. And from the age of sort of 13 to 18, I went to pretty much every home game and a lot of aways as well. And I just remember when having a bet on, I think it was Luton Nottingham Forest in the League Cup final. I think it must have been like 1989 or something like that. Yeah. So I was probably about 19 years old. Yeah. I always looked very young as a teenager. I could never get into bars or pubs or get into the bookies underage. When I learned to I passed my driving test a few months after my 17th birthday. I got pulled over by the police the first time I went out in a car because I looked about 12. And I had to give them my passport, driving license, and they sent it to all the local police forces in the Thames Valley. Basically said, if you see this kid driving a car, it's okay, he's allowed to. That age has caught up with me since.
Not at all. So 1989, the League Cup final, what was the bet there?
Yeah, it was. I think I did. I did do a half-time, full-time, forecaster. I think it was sort of Forest to be in the lead at half-time, Luton at full-time. It was like £2 at 28-1 at a local Ladbroke shop, and I did a couple of correct scores as well. I think I've staked £4, and so won about £70 for it. And I'd only gone in there because a friend of mine was putting a bet on the Grand National. This is something I'd never done before, so we bet on the Grand National, then bet on the football at the same time. So I just remember telling my dad I'd won £70. He said, "Well done, don't tell your mother."
Yeah, classic. Okay, so and I know you've had loads of roles in the betting industry: Paddy Power, William Hill Radio, Racing Post. So what do you do now in terms of? Can you sort of give a percentage of how much your time is pro punting now versus other endeavours?
Yeah, my punting is mostly recreational now. I went through a stage when I stopped doing the journalism pretty much in sort of 2008, 2009. I was a full-time pro punter, mostly in running. But since then, I've built the journalism back up again. So I write a daily column for gg.co.uk, Andrew Mount's Best Bets.
Yeah.
I do a couple of pieces a week for the Tote. I do a podcast every Thursday for GG, Weekend Watch, and sort of YouTube video and a podcast.
Yeah.
And then I've stopped writing for the Racing Post now. That was something I used to do regularly, writing the spotlights. But I still do a column for one of their weekly papers, Racing and Football Outlook.
Yeah.
And which is just a review of the last week's action and a list of horses to follow. And that's out every Tuesday. So that's about it now. So my punting's recreational. I occasionally sort of come out of my shell and have a big bet, but very occasionally.
Is the football content in the Football Outlook, or is it a racing content for a football audience?
There's football as well, and it's like two papers in one. And so when there's a big game, or the Premier League starting again, or it's the World Cup, the football will be on the front cover. You'll see in the newsagents, and the racing will be sort of inside, and vice versa when there's a big race. So so it's a paper that's been going for a long time, and it's got some good articles in it.
So, Andrew, my next question, we can skip past this because I know the answer and it's quite an impressive answer. So let's just fast forward to the next one if you don't want to answer in detail. But in all honesty, I ask everyone this: are you a net winner, loser, and break it down into your most successful sports? Obviously, horse racing is the one. Are there any sports that you will admit you're no good at betting? And I also want to hear about your very clever system for the Eurovision Song Contest.
Well, yeah, I'm a net winner. Mostly, through Betfair betting on horse racing, particularly in the in-running days. Plus, I've sort of run a Scoop 6 syndicate in my time, which has won the bet 3 times. So that's been pretty helpful as well.
Yeah.
But, in terms of other sports, my old boss, bookmaker Martin Verrill, who trades as Martin of Leicester, once told me never bet on anything with a round ball, and he was like, that football, Andrew, there's only 3 options: home, away, or draw, and they still can't get it right. So,
wow.
That was his. I think he's changed his opinion since then, and obviously there are people like yourself on the sharp betting, as you've proven, that can make it pay. But it was, I think I found horse racing all consuming. I just didn't really have time, for anything else to study it to the level that I'd want to feel confident betting on it.
Yeah, great. Okay. And so tell me about this Eurovision system you had.
Oh, well, I knew a guy who was sort of involved in the Eurovision betting at the early stages, and he knew another couple of guys. One of them who was actually worked for the Eurovision setup, and they would get the videos and the songs way in advance, and they thought that I might be helpful. So they sent me the CD months in advance of Eurovision, and I was driving up and down the country to the races, and I wasn't listening to the radio or my own music. I was listening to Eurovision songs, and they sent everyone away to come up with a short list of 3 songs. And when they saw my 3, they immediately dismissed me as tone deaf. But there was the other 3 guys. They had the same country on their short list of 3: Ukraine, 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 and then. There was a sort of a pre-arranged time. I think it was a Monday or Tuesday morning that we were all going to back Ukraine. We were 14-1. This was Wild Dances was the song. I think it was 2000. Can't remember the year. 2002, 2003, something like that. And I think the first bet I tried to have was £20 at 14-1 and got cut back to a tenner. But
So
Betfair was around at the time, and so yeah, Ukraine won, and we won a few quid out of that. And since then, yeah, Eurovision betting seems to have taken off in popularity.
I mean, I love that most people, when they talk about betting on the Eurovision Song Contest, talk about the geopolitical elements. I love the fact that you are actually listening to the music to make
Yeah.
your decisions.
I said the other three guys. One of them studied the songs, one of them studied the videos, and another one studied the voting patterns
Amazing.
and looked at and knew that, for example, that the UK would give 10 points to Malta or whatever, an island.
Yeah, exactly. But what was aesthetics a variable? Like, what did the band look like?
Yeah, I think that went into it as well, and I say one of these judges as well would also get to watch the dress rehearsal. This is before they started televising all that as well, so there was an element of inside information.
And was that just like a one-off for 1 year, or did you repeat that?
No, I carried on, and and then I think it was when Dana International won for Israel. That was a good year. Yeah. And it's great fun when you've got a bet on, because it's like a 3-hour-long photo finish as the voting comes in.
Yeah.
But then I had a complete disaster when Yordi, the Finnish heavy metal band, won it, and the first thing I did, I thought, that's not Eurovision, that can't win, and laid it, and then carried on laying it until I was about 1,500 quid in the red, and I fell out of love with Eurovision after that.
So you used the analogy of a 3-hour photo finish. In my research, one of your incredible bets was on a photo finish, was it not? Can you tell me about that? Didn't you get 1,000 to 1 on what was essentially an even money shot?
Yeah, that was back in 2008. It was a handicap sprint at Windsor. There was a horse called Make My Dream, who I had on my shortlist pre-race, about 14 to 1, 16 to 1 shot on Betfair just before the off. And I was worried about his high draw. So I was watching his stall. I was watching him throughout the race. And when he broke well and got more across to the stand side, which is where you wanted to be at the time, I thought, okay, I'll stay with him. I'll have another click. And then I'm watching the race, and I say playing and running in the Canary Wharf trading room. And as they've crossed the line, I think he's won. But it's a photo, and it's one of those photos where you kind of, they've called a photo, but it's not like 51-49. It's you're pretty sure, 95% sure plus, and it's flashed up 1,000. So I've instinctively pressed. I've got my button. My one-click button set up. I had 25 quid. Got 15 matched at 1,000. The next 10 is matched at like 9 to 2 or something like that. And what's happened is the number cloth. I think he was number 10. The number cloth's folded, and you can only see the 1. And it turns out so it's similar colour to the 1 horse, and of course everyone's seen number 1 cross the line first. Wow. That one's traded at 101 in the photo finish betting. And mine's won over 15,000 quid on the race. And the commentators called it wrong as well. That was another thing that helped. I've sat back afterwards. I've said he's called the wrong one, and the guy opposite, a friend of mine sitting nearby, said, "I hope not, and I've just had 7 grand on that at 101." So it just shows that in that situation, you were sometimes the person on the other end of the bet could be sitting right next to you. So that's another good reason why you should never boom winners. And
that's crazy. That's one of the most extreme. So was there no sort of issue of them saying that was a palpable error and bets void?
No, it's buyer beware. You're in running. It's like when there was a horse many years ago at Toaster where Derek Thompson has called it as a faller, but he's got his colours mixed up. As soon as he said the horse is fallen, it's gone from 7 to 1 to 1,000. I think someone laid 250 quid at 1,000, and then it's gone on to win the race.
That's incredible. Yeah. Wow. So what about the at times when you've just got it wrong, where you just think you've placed a good bet and it's been nowhere near?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of times I've placed a good bet and it's been nowhere near. There's also, I think my worst ever bet was after we used to bet quite heavily on the jockey's title, when you could get bets on these things, and it was something that you could research and study and know more than the odds makers, because they'd see that a jockey's had a treble on Monday night at Windsor, so they'll shorten his odds. But he might have got a 3-day whip ban, which under the totting up procedure means he's going to get 3 weeks further down the line, and so he should have drifted the betting. And there's a lot of nuances like that you could take advantage of. But after winning on Ryan Moore when he won his first title, I then Coral's priced up Hayley Turner. You're going to laugh at this, at 25 to 1 to win the title anytime in the next 5 years. I think she just did she win the she won the Apprentice's title, dead heated. I think it might have been with Salim Golem going back today. And I thought that the industry will get behind her, and if there was a female jockey with a genuine chance of being champion jockey, then there would be a big push, for the good of racing, to get behind her. And turned out that her work ethic wasn't perhaps what it needed to be to win the jockey's title, and it was the worst bet I've ever had by a long way.
That was a while ago, right? That was
this would be sort of 2009, 2008, something like that, I think.
So last 15 years, anything stands out more recently, though you just sort of smack yourself on the head for it?
I suppose not like one individual horse or anything like that, but I think just when I'm on a run, a losing run, leaning towards the front of the market and not trusting my gut, and and not sort of doing what I do best, and perhaps being frightened of the big price one because you know that you're 35 points down in the month on your column, and you think, I need to stop the rot and go for something a little bit safer, and that's never been my modus operandi. And you sometimes just need to take a step back and sort of think about what you're doing a bit more.
So can you talk to me about the sort of the process that you go? You're obviously very analytical and mathematical, but what's the process you go through? So talk to me about your Shergar Cup flops. Okay, so that you had about 350 bets on that, making 25% ROI, and it sounded like a very straightforward system. You would take the single-digit horses that finished outside the top 3 and back them in their next race.
Yeah, that's right. Because the Shergar Cup is a bit of a unique event, and it's a team event. So a lot of the jockeys who are riding have never ridden at Ascot before. If they're coming from the United States, they've probably never ridden in a 2-mile race before. Certainly not on turf. And a lot of the horses running there are just running because they need a certain number of horses to make up the teams. They want to have 10 runners or 12 runners, whatever it is. So they might be running not in their ideal circumstances, perhaps too soon after their latest run, and just as a favour to the organisers almost. What I found when I was working on William Hill Radio was that a lot of these horses were winning next time out, having disappointed. So I just defined a Shergar Cup flop as a horse who was, like you say, 4th or worst when starting at 9 to 1 or shorter, and just next time out, they made good bets. And I'm just looking at recent years. It's something on Betfair SP. It's 57.4% profit on turnover.
That's insane. And so why do you share that? Why don't you keep that to yourself?
Well, because at the time I was being employed to write a weekly systems column for Race Form Update and later Racing and Football Outlook. I'm being paid as a pundit to come up with angles. And so a lot of these systems using the Proform software were things that I sort of came up with just because when I was first on William Hill Radio, you were doing every single race. And on a Saturday, if you're covering 8 meetings, nowadays they've changed it so that certain pundits get certain meetings, but you do every single race, and you'd have to have something to say about it. And you couldn't sit there and go through every single race in enough detail. So having a system like this, it might just throw something up, and you'd get a minute, maybe 2 minutes, perhaps on a Saturday, to talk in between races and say, Andrew, what shall I hear? So, this has come up on my Shergar Cup flops angle, and there's been a bit of money for it. It's 10 to 1 into 8 to 1, so I'll go with this one. So it was really to save time as a pundit. And actually come up with something different that nobody else was talking about as well.
That's right. And did you start sharing it immediately, or did you wait till you had a sort of a data set to sort of give you confidence that you're onto something?
Yeah, I mean, these things I've I've sort of like studied over a certain number of years. There's certain systems that have stood the test of time, like Venetia Williams handicap chases in November. I think I first wrote about that one in the newspaper about 20 years ago. It still makes a profit now. A lot of people know about it.
Right.
I mean, I remember many years ago at York, I was a guest of Betfair in their box and met a couple of professional punters, and one of them took me to task and pulled me over the coals for having theories about drawbars and things like that. And he's like, if you spot something like that, do not tell anybody else. You just keep it to yourself and take advantage of it. I think he was on his second bottle of red wine at the time. But it depends. If someone's paying you to come up with these angles and share them with their readers and paying you a wage, then why not?
And so who was the host there? Bet365?
Betfair.
Betfair. Oh, okay. So I was going to say, my next question is, presumably you've been restricted by most of the recreational books?
Yeah, very much so. I say back in the day, they used to send you letters, and I remember like getting my Victor Chandler account closed and keeping that as a badge of honour.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they didn't close my account before I knocked out half the Cheltenham profits at Aintree about 3 weeks later.
Right.
And again, I mean, the first one to go was, as with most people, was Bet365.
Yeah.
When I won the Scoop Six for the first time, it was there were a lot of winners. Our syndicate got 15 grand, but they were paying 20% bonus on winnings, so that cost them another 3 grand. And I phoned up and said, does the 20% bonus also apply to the bonus fund next week if I win that? And got short shrift after that. And again, they used to, I think they still do. They offer forecast prices based on their early odds. So I remember, you get 8 to 1 and 10 to 1, and they'd offer you, 80 to 1 or 88 to 1, something like that about the forecast. If those horses go off at 4 to 1 and 5 to 1, and the computer straight forecast pays about 27 quid, you've got some massive value there. But you have a couple of those to sort of 25, 50 quid stakes, and then you soon disappear. But,
so do you have any of them left? Does it all go through the exchange now?
I've always been able to have a good bet with William Hill because when I was working on course, I knew their head of on course and their traders, and he's basically taken me aside and said, you can have a bet if you if you promise not to arb, and it's because it's your opinion. And they would use my account as a marker account. Yeah. When I first worked on William Hill Radio, the guy who one of the traders was on the same floor, and I remember meeting him for the first time. He said, "Oh, hello, Andrew. I've seen you back so and so." I said, "How do you know that?" And he showed me the spreadsheet of all the marked accounts and the bets coming up in real time. Wow. And he says, and he told me, and again, I wasn't betting big at the time. He says, "Oh, I see you've made X amount of money, and your average stake is £30.77 or something like that." And he could give me all this information. And I would get phone calls from them occasionally saying, "Why have you bet this?" And I'll say, "I'll give the reasoning." And they say, "Oh, thank you, because the trainers bet it as well." And so it was just a sort of two-way relationship. And you weren't taking the bet. You were never backing snide odds on, trying to take the mickey and pull the pants down. And
well, that's it. It's trying to treat you like an employee rather than someone who's sort of taking from the business, someone who's actually providing to the business when they can market it. But presumably, like arbitrage was never a big part of your strategy.
It was briefly with Crayford Dogs. Okay. I remember when 2008, 2009, sort of full time in Canary Wharf. You'd get in early for Crayford Dogs in the before the horse racing, and it was the time when they were the on-course books were sort of rigging the odds, and dogs that should be 2 to 1 and 5 to 2 were opening up at 9 to 2 and 6 to 1 in the same race. It always seemed to be traps 3 and 5 at Crayford, so you'd back them both with a soft account. You'd do the reverse forecast, and then on Betfair you could lay them back at probably sort of half their odds, 2 dogs in the same race, and you'd start off by arbing, and then you soon realise that you're just giving money away. You might be laying sort of 3 to 1 and 7 to 2, but the real odds were even shorter. Yeah. And I did do this with William Hill for a time, and again the trader phoned me up. He said, "Andrew, I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Stop immediately, or you'll never have another bet with us again.
Right.
And I was like, fair enough, thanks very much.
Well, I think that is fair enough. Yeah, I've never been a huge use of the older arbitrage thing. I just think that's it's the shortcut route to getting your account restricted.
Yeah.
So what about, do you do you feel that if you're watching a live sporting event now, that you still like to have sort of a fun bet, a recreational bet that you won't track and you won't follow the success of?
So not really. If I was watching in a social situation around a friend's house or in a pub or a bar, and there's half a dozen of us, I might sort of say, right, everyone stick a fiver in or a tenner in, and we'll do some sort of correct score, next goal scorer bet or something like that. And winner takes all, but stick a little bit in the charity tin on the bar.
Yeah. Nice.
But again, if someone can make a good case, if I'm listening to a pundit for any sport, I don't know anything about a large number of Olympic sports, but if I was watching someone sort of break it down and then them sort of saying, I think this is going to happen for this reason, and then I might follow them. And it's like you with boxing. I don't know much about boxing at all. I've never bet on boxing.
Right.
But I was fascinated by your discussion about boxers taking on southpaws.
Oh yeah.
And, I mean, southpaw was a name I'd never heard of until was it the Jake Gyllenhaal film?
Right. Okay.
Recently.
Good movie.
So that fascinated me. And again, recently I had my first fencing lesson a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And an angle there as well is that left-handed fencers have an advantage because there's a certain sort of moves that it takes a right-handed person 3 moves to get into. They do it in 2. So again, if in the next Olympics there's betting on fencing, and there's a pundit there who sort of makes out a case, to that effect, then I might just be tempted, despite not knowing anything about it myself.
Well, the southpaw, 90% of the time, they are up against right-handers. The right-hander, 10% of the time, they're up against. So in terms of like muscle memory and having a database of experience, it's a completely, one-sided thing. And so there's another one next weekend. Alvarez Crawford. Like, Alvarez is the face of boxing, but he's 2-1 on. Crawford 6-4. Like, there's a southpaw factor and many other factors that make me pretty confident that there's going to be an upset there. So, how would you price up the 6-4 at this stage? Yeah, I mean, I don't mind stating an opinion before the fact. I think they've got the wrong favourite. I really do. I think it's the other way around.
Now I'm interested. I might be having my first boxing bet.
Like, the only thing with boxing betting is that a lot of these big fights, they cancel each other out and it goes to decision. And sometimes the scoring is just whack. And you've done all the research and you've got the bet right, but you watch the scoring and you're like, my guy won, but they've given it to the other guy. This is one of those fights because Alvarez is the face of boxing. The judges might subconsciously be favouring his work. But if it's a fair fight, I'm with Crawford. But yeah, so I'd never encourage people to bet any serious money on boxing because of that. You can be right, but still not get paid.
Right.
So is there a sort of single, when you're out with your mates and you're doing, the correct score pot and so on, is there a single question that you would ask someone that would reveal to you how much they know about sports betting?
I did think about that. One thing I remember, I used to know a pro punter called the Cowboy who only bet on ratings, and I'd say, "What do you fancy?" And he said, "I don't fancy anything. A horse is a bet or it isn't." So that was something that stuck with me. He was an incredible guy who basically bought like a year's worth of racing posts and had a system based on the postmark, the race ratings, the racing post ratings, and he would drive around the country betting on course, and he said, I want evens about this one, I want 2-1 about this one, and he just sort of had it worked out. And he showed me his ledgers over years, and he made good money at it.
He needs a new marketing team, though. The Cowboy does not. That's not good optics.
No, definitely not. It was down to the hat he used to wear. But another one I thought about. Have you heard of a firm called Racing Research and a guy called John Whiteley?
I have, a few years ago.
Yeah, he was ex-Timeform, and he used to produce. I think they still produce ratings that were based on mostly collateral form, speed as well. I think very complicated-looking ratings that people would pay sort of 20 quid for a meeting or something like that. Now, I had an interview with him many years ago, probably going back over 25 years, when his company had just been bought, and the new owners were looking to sort of expand it, and he needed some help. And at the time, I was sort of working as a database programmer amongst other things in Microsoft Access. I'd just had my first book out, so I had sort of horse racing and database knowledge. And I remember we'd be chatting, having this interview. I got to the second interview. I think there was 70 people down to 4, and I didn't get the job. But he would just stop halfway through a sentence and say, "What are the combined odds of 2 4-to-1 shots?" And you go, and I'd say, 6 to 4. And he'd say, "How did you work that out?" And I'd say, "Well, I'm thinking if I have, a pound on each of them, I've staked 2 and I've got 5 back, So it's like it's the equivalent of having 2. And he says, "Oh, I do that differently." And he does it the sort of, the mathematical way rather than just the sort of, the puntery way.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, conversation. I remember the interview was up in Leeds. I missed my train back. Missed the train back because the interview just went on for hours. But it was great fun. He was a fascinating guy to talk to.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe throw them a sort of odds-related question.
It's interesting to do that. So that was his technique, was it, to surprise you with a left field question that you weren't expecting, just to see how you. Yeah, nice. And what about, so in our industry, there's tons of vernacular parlance and all this stuff. Are there any phrases that just really annoy? I really get annoyed when I hear the bookmakers aren't often wrong, because I'm like, every time they offer a market, they can be wrong on the other thing. So it's like, that doesn't really make sense. But are there any things that sort of grind your gears when you hear people say it?
Yeah, I think when a there's a market move for an outsider from 25 to 1 into 10, and there's each way money for so and so, and you're like, how do you know it's each way money? And you're like, I've bet this, but I think it's a kind of win or bust selection. I don't want the place parts, and so there's a lot of sort of lazy vernacular out there, as you say, and that's one that always annoys me.
I didn't realize it annoyed me until you've mentioned it, and now retrospectively I have been annoyed by that, absolutely. And okay, so what about on the high street? When did you last place a bet on the high street?
Yesterday. I tend to sort of mess around with multiples in one of my local shops, and I think it's important to sort of keep a relationship with the shop and use it or lose it, and certainly be on friendly terms with the staff as well, so that if you do want a proper bet, and when they need to phone up for it, they get inevitably asked, is he a regular? They can say yes without having to tell a lie. And they might also tell you that if it's more than a certain amount, we have to phone it through, and you might know that you can have 190 quid on it without question, not 200.
But so they know who you are, but they still take your business?
Yeah, because I'm not betting massively, but I'm just betting regularly. And another thing as well is there's certain markets on the machines in some of those shops that I can't access with the firms that I can bet with online. Yeah. So I might want to bet place only on a particular horse, 3 places in a race that's come down from 8 runners to 7 runners, and they're still offering a 3-place market. Yeah. So it's just little nuances like that as well.
Yeah, nice. And away from sort of sports betting and horse racing, do you have any experience at any other sort of risk taking in terms of blackjack, card counting, poker, crypto, finance markets, anything like that?
Yeah, poker passed me by. I had a lot of friends who were or are professional poker players who always tried to get me involved, but I was so busy with horse racing, I just didn't think I'd have the time, so I wouldn't be able to sleep. So I did play in lockdown, just a sort of social game, and just learn it, just so I could actually have contact with people. But I sort of, every time I've got involved in stocks and shares, it's tended to have gone badly. I bought shares in a pharmaceutical firm, and I had a tip off that the cannabinoids they were testing were going to get approval for medicinal use, and I held onto the shares for ages at sort of 50p, and then sold them just before they went up to a $5. And I always enjoyed Blackjack. From first time I went to Vegas, I watched the film 21 on the plane, and twice, and And then when I got out there, I was impressed by Americans and how they all seem to know basic strategy.
Yeah.
And the casinos there used to have, free sort of tutorial sessions for games like craps and blackjack, and they were interested in like you getting enjoyment out of the game by learning how to play it, rather than just relieving you of every penny you had on you as soon as you get into the casino, like British casinos do.
Well, also Vegas, when that movie came out and the book was bringing down that brilliant book, Bringing Down the House, which is the book the film is based on, and they love it because they think people are going to go and try basic strategy and count cards, and it's incredibly hard. Like I used to do it. I used to play basic strategy, count cards, and I taught myself to get.
Was that in this country or in the States?
So I learned in the UK. Because it kind of sorted my map. It fitted my mind well. I could get through the cards, and then I went to Switzerland and I had a weekend betting in a casino in Switzerland. Made a few £100, euros, francs, whatever it was. Went to Vegas, lost everything in about an hour because the variance is crazy. You have to play because you got a 1% edge. You have to play for so long for that edge to get on you and be so disciplined. But yeah. The theory is there; it does work, but it's not easy to get to the long run.
I learned to card count, and I'd buy all the books. Blackjack Attack was one with all the tables in about what to do in each situation. If there's 8 decks or there's no double after split and things like that.
And I used to have the basic strategy thing as my screensaver on my phone, so whenever I'd look, it was an Ed Thorpe's book, Beat the Dealer. That was the classic. That's where it all started.
And then, and playing in the UK, particularly being based in the Midlands, you didn't have many options. And so you'd sort of, go to one casino in Northampton, 2 in Leicester, drive over to Coventry. And then with the expenses and things like that, it was a bit of a grind. And we used to do it on the way, when we were betting and running at the tracks, like we'd be regulars at Wolverhampton, and a couple of us would stop off at Walsall, the casino there. One of us would go in first, and they would reveal the count to the other by how many chips they placed up. But you're only sort of really capable of winning the petrol money or something like that.
Yeah.
If you got 30 quid or 50 quid or something like that on a short session on your way home, it was pretty good.
So I love the fact that you had these subtle signs, like in the movies, put the chips count there, scratch your head 4 times because the count is +4, whatever. When I did it in Switzerland with my mates, I was literally just doing it in my head, and I just tell them. I just said the count's +5, bet more. I just say it aloud. They didn't even care.
There are times you can walk into a casino and there's 6 boxes open, and there's just a host of small cards on the table, and you can just think, I should probably join in now.
It is so volatile though. It's a really fun game, but it is you can go on, you get bad beats, what feel like bad beats all the time.
And of course, it's the emotional side as well, because if everyone else is playing basic strategy apart from the person on the last box, who's just hit when they shouldn't, or and it ruins it for the whole table. I know that doesn't matter, but then when you're there and it's just cost you your biggest stake of the night, it can be difficult to cope with.
Great fun though. Okay, so you've got quite a wide range of experience. If there was one thing you could tell your younger self about everything you know now, what would that advice be?
I think it would be study the mental side of gambling and money management, because it's very easy to become overconfident when you're on a good run, and doubt your ability when you're on a bad one. And again, nothing lasts forever is another thing as well. So in terms of when I first started betting, it was inconceivable you'd have your account closed. And so if you could go back and think, I'd need to I need to adopt more camouflage techniques, and keep my stakes to a similarly low level, and have the occasional spin on the roulette on the site that may help me go under the radar, or bet 200 quid on Man United at even money and lay 2.02 on Betfair, and just try to prolong that account.
Brilliant. I think I will clip up that last 60 seconds of everything you've just said, because I think that's the camouflaging. That's all it takes. When I'm placing my plus EV bets. I have the bets I want to place on the football here on a second window. I'm just randomly hitting the roulette wheel every few minutes. So what about, are you familiar with the Sharp Betting website, our website? This is the chance I ask my guests to say if there's anything they particularly like on the site, or if there's anything they would want added to it.
Yeah, I like the early speed angle. As a and that's. I mean, I know some people who tried to make a living just out of betting the front runners on Betfair and trading them back shorter soon after the start. That's perhaps not as viable as it once was.
Yeah.
But you get certain meetings where the front runners are winning everything. There might be a tailwind. It might be ground based where there's a faster strip where the front runners get onto it first. And I think some sort of almost live or mid-meeting update might be handy, just to say, our ratings have highlighted the first two winners at Goodwood who were top on early speed. It might be worth playing the next two or three in a multiple bet or something like that. So the other, I like the market movers. One thing. So the software I use as well is good for that, because you can highlight the market moves at certain times. You can then split it by trainers and owners and sort of compare when the significant moves are, whether they're overnight or whether they're between, say, 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning. But one thing I used to do back in the day, I think it was sort of pre-Betfair, or when Betfair was in its infancy, was to look at certain bookmakers laid horses from certain yards. This is something that you learnt when you worked on course, because Corals used to get Sir Mark Prescott money. And so if Corals bet a Prescott runner at the track with an on-course bookmaker, they very rarely lost. And I remember, I think it was Charles Hills, whoever was betting the Charles Hills horses that were running well, they always seemed to bet them with Ladbrokes, and they'd shorten the prices about 11 o'clock. So you could look at Ladbrokes prices. If they shortened one up from that yard at a certain time in the morning, you'd know that it was live. So there are little things like that you could spot. Yeah. So obviously it's more work for you, but if you say this one's shortened, and the last 6 horses from this yard that have shortened between 10 and 11 o'clock, 3 of them have won, and you've made a profit of X.
Yeah. Great. No, good one. I'll put that on the list for the discussion. So, Andrew, my final question is, I've got a coin here. It's a fair coin, 50-50, but I'm offering you 5-1 odds for one bet that you can get heads or tails. Would you transfer to me right now?
Right, I'd liquidate all my assets, put all of it on. Then I'd phone up every sharp, every punter, every bookmaker I knew, and offer them 2-1 in Arbin.
Love it.
But in the absence of doing that, I'd probably have 200 quid on, because that's about my maximum bet nowadays. And that's
nice.
I know I'm getting extremely good value.
Sensible. For the sake of £1,000, I almost want to give you that bet now, because that's a very good answer. But maybe if we meet in person, we'll do that. All right. So, Andrew, where do people find you? We can put some links in the description.
Yeah, I write a daily column for the gg.co.uk website. I'm active on X at Trend Horses.
Yeah.
And if you go to a newsagent's, pick up an old-style newspaper, you can find me in Racing and Football Outlook every Tuesday. Amazing. Brilliant. Andrew, thanks so much for your time. Really enjoyed that. And hopefully we'll meet in real life soon. Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for having me on. Thanks, Andrew. Bye-bye.